One day, a treasure map appeared in the world, revealing the lost arts of a legendary genius. It also spoke of a secret weapon he left behind. And with this news, the martial world, which had been quiet for so long, was about to be plunged into chaos once again. A dark form plummets from the sky with incredible speed, its destination a solitary mountain peak, a place of serene beauty, untouched by the world's greed. But that tranquility is about to be shattered. It slams into the earth with devastating force, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris. As the dust settles, a lone figure emerges from the crater. In his hand, a weathered blade that has seen countless battles. A young man steps into the light, declaring his long-awaited freedom. His eyes hold a story of hardship and an unbreakable will. He looks up at the sky, a sight he hasn't seen for years, but his past remains a blur, his memories lost to the darkness of the cave. He focuses, knowing he must piece together what was stolen from him, because a burning desire for revenge is the one thing he hasn't forgotten. His mind flashes back to an old master, the legendary Cheonkija, who gave him and countless others a single impossible mission: save the world. He remembers standing among a crowd of faces all brought to this cave. Cheonkija's voice echoes in his mind, demanding absolute obedience. The master announced that their grueling training would begin the very next day. While others showed fear, our boy's gaze was steady, unwavering. But Cheonkija had one final chilling warning for them all. He had sealed the cave, ensuring no one could get in or out. And so began a life of suffering disguised as martial arts training. Their first lesson was not in combat, but simply how to breathe. Then came the sword, a technique of immense power and precision, followed by footwork so fundamental, it was like learning to walk all over again. Cheonkija promised them power beyond imagination, a path to godhood. They were given 7 years to master every single technique. And at the end of it all, a single door stood as their final test, a gateway they were all expected to pass through. And so, they stepped into the true training grounds. A strange, thick fog filled the air around them. But our boy's focus never wavered for a second, all part of the master's cruel, calculated plan. A plan that hinged on the very environment they were in. Because the fog wasn't just mist, it was pure, condensed energy. The trainees stand before a dark abyss, sensing the master's true intent. And from that darkness, a horrifying monster begins to take shape. A legion of skeletal beasts, their eyes burning with malice. This was the real test. A battle for survival against impossible odds. A colossal serpent of bone and shadow descends upon them. One of them shouts the command for everyone to draw their weapons. But our boy is already a step ahead, unleashing his own power. The others quickly follow suit, channeling their energy into their strikes, each one unleashing the techniques they spent years perfecting. They meet the monstrous threat head-on, with no room for hesitation. He had mastered the 3 core arts: breathing, swordsmanship, and footwork. The sole survivor of a massacre, standing alone in a cavern of the dead. A fallen comrade's last breath was spent uttering his name. And with that memory, his identity returns: Dan Hyung-woo. His first steps back into civilization lead him to a bustling city. His destination is a grand establishment known as the Chuan Pavilion. Inside, the air is thick with the murmur of patrons and the clatter of cups. Hyung-woo takes a moment, his gaze sweeping across the unfamiliar faces, until it lands on a young woman named Jo Seol-yeon, the daughter of a prominent family. And for a brief moment, their eyes seem to connect across the crowded room. But his presence doesn't go unnoticed by the other patrons. They point out the strange sight of a sword carried without a proper sheath. Jo-in, Seol-yeon's brother, smirks, noting the impressive quality of the blade. Just then, a simple bowl of noodles is placed before Hyung-woo. For the first time in years, he sits down to a proper meal. He lifts the noodles, a foreign yet familiar sensation. The taste is overwhelming, a simple pleasure he had long forgotten. His genuine enjoyment even inspires others to order the same dish. But across the room, Jo Seol-yeon's gaze remains fixed on him. She can't explain the strange pull she feels towards this mysterious stranger. With the bowl empty, Hyung-woo quietly acknowledges how delicious it was. The waiter smiles, pleased to have another satisfied customer. He then politely asks for payment, stating the cost of the meal. But a sudden, stark realization dawns on Hyung-woo's face. After years of isolation, the concept of currency had completely escaped him. He finally remembers that in this world, nothing is free. The waiter's friendly demeanor begins to fade, sensing a problem. Hyung-woo calmly admits that he has no way to pay. Annoyed, the man demands Hyung-woo's sword as collateral for the meal. But his eyes narrow. That is the one thing he will never give up. He explains that the blade was a trade for his last friend's life. The waiter's patience snaps, accusing him of planning to eat for free all along. The loud exchange draws the attention of everyone in the pavilion. Her brother Jo-in calls out in surprise as his sister suddenly stands up. Jo Seol-yeon steps forward, holding out a pouch of money. She offers to pay for him, telling the waiter not to scold him. The waiter is taken aback by the sudden intervention from the young miss, and for the first time, Hyung-woo and Seol-yeon stand face to face. He's caught off guard, trying to process why this stranger would help him. But as she looks closer, she sees an innocence in his gaze, like a child seeing the world for the first time. Without a word, Hyung-woo simply turns away, leaving both Seol-yeon and the waiter stunned by his silence. She's left speechless, unable to process his sudden departure, and just like that, he's gone, walking out of the pavilion. A small, curious smile plays on Seol-yeon's lips. The waiter, however, is furious at the lack of gratitude. Her brother scoffs, calling him an ungrateful wanderer with empty pockets. He adds that the man seemed to possess no internal energy whatsoever, but Seol-yeon can't shake the memory of his incredible blade. A contradiction that deepens the mystery surrounding the stranger. She worries that such a masterpiece of a blade will only attract trouble without a sheath. Feeling a strange sense of responsibility, she decides she must follow him. Meanwhile, Hyung-woo stops, the weight of her kindness finally settling in. He realizes that in his haste, he never even offered a word of thanks. Back inside the Chuyeon Pavilion, the atmosphere is buzzing with activity. Groups of martial artists gather, their conversations filling the air. The power of the Murim Alliance is on full display. Jo Seol-yeon observes that the entire city is filled with their warriors. Her brother Jo-in adds that even the alliance leader himself has made a move. Their escort explains it's because the Evil Path Alliance is on the move. The escort explains it's the alliance leader's fearsome reputation that commands such loyalty. A reputation built on the legend of the genius Cheonkija, a man said to have mastered trap formations and even the ability to read the energy of heaven. In his final years, Cheonkija's power reached its absolute peak. He created a martial art called the Flash Shadow Blade, a technique that shook the entire world. Using his unique methods, he transformed a third-rate wanderer into an absolute master in just 3 short years. But that warrior was eventually branded an enemy of the world and met a tragic end. After that incident, Cheonkija simply vanished without a trace, and now that the Jo family has found his treasure map, the entire martial world is in an uproar to claim his legacy. The escort reminds Seol-yeon that while he's there to protect her, they must remain cautious. He warns that in this world, unexpected things can happen at any moment. A world where the unexpected is the only certainty. Her brother Jo-in immediately objects to her plan to follow the stranger. He dismisses Hyung-woo as a rude wanderer, unworthy of her kindness. But Seol-yeon seems conflicted, her gaze distant. The escort agrees, adding that it's too dangerous to leave the group with the alliance leader on his way. Faced with their combined concern, she reconsiders her impulsive decision. She reluctantly agrees to stay, putting her curiosity aside for now. Meanwhile, Dan Hyung-woo walks alone through the crowded streets, unaware of the stir he's caused. He watches the simple, everyday act of a man haggling at a market stall. Nearby, a musician plays a gentle tune for a small, happy crowd. To Hyung-woo, this world feels impossibly peaceful. His eyes drift to a mother and her son shopping for fabric. He watches the boy's pure joy at receiving a gift from his mother. A sight so foreign it sends his mind reeling back into the past, to a promise made by his friend amidst the chaos of the cave. A final request from a man who knew his time was running out. He asked Hyung-woo to find his family if he made it out alive, but Hyung-woo refused, telling him to survive and do it himself. His friend just laughs, agreeing to find his family on his own. His gaze hardens with resolve as he makes one final request, for Hyung-woo to survive. And together they fought as one, determined to make it through another day. But in the chaos of battle, a new threat emerged from the shadows. Hyung-woo screams a warning as a monstrous claw descends upon his friend. But it's too late, and a single tear traces a path of despair down his face. His friend had thrown himself in front of the attack, taking the fatal blow. Hyung-woo collapses beside him, demanding to know why he made such a sacrifice. He begs him to get up, to keep his promise to see his family again. But with his last breath, his friend entrusts him with the mission he couldn't complete. His friend's final words are an apology for leaving him behind. He reflects on the freedom that cost 99 other lives, and he knows he owes a debt to every single one of them. A debt he promises to collect from their master, Cheonkija. Pulled from his memories, Hyung-woo stops in his tracks. He finds he's walked back to the Chuyeon Pavilion without even realizing it. A flicker of thought crosses his mind. He wonders if the kind young woman is still inside, remembering he never thanked her. Inside, Seol-yeon discusses her travel plans with her companions, but her voice seems to have reached Hyung-woo just outside the door. The Murim Alliance warriors stand ready, their faces set with grim determination. Their leader declares their destination is only a day's journey away if they push themselves. and with a unified roar, they leap into the night, a blur of motion across the city. From a nearby rooftop, Dan Hyung-woo watches them go. He sees Jo Seol-yeon among them, preparing to depart as well. He realizes the kind young woman is leaving with the warriors. And without a second thought, he gives chase, needing to know their destination. He follows them through the night, a silent shadow against the starry sky. The group finally stops to rest at the base of Hyungsan Mountain. A sudden, chilling thought strikes Hyung-woo. They might be heading to the very place he escaped. He wonders what they could possibly be searching for in this desolate place. Meanwhile, the Alliance members discuss the recent movements of their enemies. The Murim Alliance strategist, Zhuge Zhongtian, tries to reassure his leader, but the Alliance leader, Doko-un, can't shake a feeling of deep unease. Nearby, Jo Seol-yeon looks exhausted from the relentless pace of their journey. A vice leader named Ping Cheol-young offers to request a break on her behalf, but her brother Jo-in quickly steps in, telling the man to leave her alone. Just then, a new group emerges from the shadows of the forest. Their leader's eyes gleam with malice as he declares he's finally found them. Seo Hyul-gui, a stronghold leader from the Green Forest, taunts the Murim Alliance for hiding. The Alliance leader immediately orders his men to prepare for an ambush. His strategist warns him that the Evil Path Alliance has joined their enemies. They know their opponent, Seo Hyul-gui, is not someone to be taken lightly. With a roar, the enemy's forces charge in, eager to spill blood. A single warrior tears through the Alliance's formation with brutal kicks. The Murim warriors are caught completely off guard by the ferocity of the attack. He moves like a whirlwind of destruction, his strikes unstoppable. The Alliance members fall, their defenses shattered in an instant. The surprise attack quickly turns into a one-sided slaughter. But just as the chaos reaches its peak, a new figure calmly steps onto the battlefield. The Green Forest leader smirks, having finished off the weaker warriors. But the Alliance leader, Dako-un, fights back with everything he has. His opponent only laughs, relishing the chaos of the battle. The two leaders finally meet in the center of the bloody clearing. Their blades clash with a force that shakes the very ground. All around them, the Murim Alliance continues to fall. Dako-un realizes with dread that they are hopelessly outnumbered. His enemy taunts him, claiming Cheonkija's weapon for his own. But that name catches the attention of the silent observer in the trees. And Dan Hyung-woo finally draws his blade, ready to enter the fray. A massive boulder is shattered by an unseen force. As Dan Hyung-woo leaps from the trees, descending upon the battlefield, he cuts through the air like a bolt of lightning, catching the Green Forest warriors completely by surprise. He lands among them, a whirlwind of motion, and in a single fluid strike clears the area around him. His sudden appearance leaves the Murim Alliance warriors speechless. Even the fearsome Seo Hyul-gui can only stare in disbelief. Jo Seol-yeon watches, her heart pounding in her chest. Her brother and the others are equally stunned by the impossible display of power. He stands over the fallen, his voice cutting through the silence with a single question. The Alliance leader is stunned, unable to comprehend how he failed to sense this man's arrival. He thanks Hyung-woo for the aid, but is forced to deliver some grim news. He explains that their master, Cheonkija, died a decade ago. The words hang in the air, a final, crushing blow to Hyung-woo's quest. Dan Hyung-woo is frozen, the very foundation of his revenge suddenly shattered. But he can't accept it. He still has a debt to collect for the lives of his friends. A terrifying aura begins to radiate from his body, striking fear into the hearts of the remaining enemy warriors. His power surges, fueled by a rage that refuses to be denied its target. The wave of energy washes over the battlefield, paralyzing everyone with a sense of utter despair. He reflects on the years of suffering he endured, only to find his target is already gone. His mind flashes back to the final pleas of his fallen friends, who begged him to avenge their unjust deaths. The Alliance leader recognizes this terrifying power as the energy of emptiness. He knows that if this continues, it could drive his own men mad. But a gentle voice cuts through his rage, asking if he's all right. It's Jo Seol-yeon, her face etched with genuine concern. He remembers the friend who gave him this very sword, his last wish for Hyung-woo to survive. The memory seems to pull him back from the brink, his expression softening. With his rage subsided, Hyung-woo finds a new purpose: to find his friend's family. The other warriors breathe a sigh of relief as the suffocating pressure finally lifts. The Alliance leader is stunned, realizing the terrifying energy of emptiness has vanished. He's left wondering about the true identity of this mysterious young man. Dan Hyung-woo's gaze softens as it lands on the one who calmed his storm. He turns his full attention to Jo Seol-yeon. She gently asks if he's looking for someone. Turning to her older companion, she explains that this is the man who saved them. She then asks if Hyung-woo could travel with them until he finds who he's searching for. The older man considers her heartfelt request, his expression unreadable. The strategist weighs the risk, knowing it's hard to refuse their savior. But he also remembers the terrifying power Yong-woo unleashed. A man who single-handedly turned the tide of the battle is a dangerous variable. But with their forces depleted, an ally of this caliber is too valuable to lose. And so, the alliance leader makes his decision, agreeing to the request. The older man steps forward, looking Dan Hyung-woo up and down. He then makes an unexpected offer, a job at an escort agency. The other warriors murmur in surprise. The Hanam agency is a prestigious and difficult place to enter. But Dan Hyung-woo seems hesitant, unsure of what to make of the offer. Jo-in scoffs at his hesitation, unable to believe he would refuse such an opportunity. But Dan Hyung-woo calmly admits he has no idea what an escort agency even is. His honest ignorance leaves the others completely stunned. As Seol-yeon explains the basics, the alliance leader begins to have second thoughts. But not everyone is impressed by the newcomer's sudden appearance. Peng Cheol-yong, however, can't take his eyes off the incredible blade Hyung-woo carries. The sharp, powerful aura emanating from it is unmistakable. They agree that such a masterpiece is wasted on a wanderer and deserves a more worthy owner. With a greedy smirk, he decides to wait for the perfect moment to claim it for himself. As a new day dawns, the group finally reaches their destination. They stand at the foot of Hyungsan Mountain, the very place Hyung-woo's nightmare began. The alliance leader looks up, a sense of unease washing over him. But Dan Hyung-woo remains perfectly still, his expression unreadable. He realizes this desolate mountain was their destination all along. The alliance leader can barely contain his excitement, but admits they can't find the entrance. His men scour the cliffs, finding no trace of the legendary cave. They consider using force, but fear destroying the very treasure they seek. A knowing smirk plays on Dan Hyung-woo's lips as he listens to their debate. He knows the exit he used has collapsed, but he can still sense his master's energy. A faint, dark aura seeps from the rocks, confirming his suspicions, and without a word, he suddenly springs into action, leaving the others in his dust. He effortlessly scales the cliff face, leaving the others staring in awe. He lands precisely on a hidden ledge, his cloak settling around him. With absolute certainty, he declares that this is the entrance to the cave. The alliance leader can only stare, asking how he could possibly know the way. Dan Hyung-woo's answer is simple and chilling. This is where he used to live. The revelation shocks Seol-yeon, while Peng Cheol-yong smirks, his suspicions confirmed. The man dismisses Hyung-woo as a wild beast, which explains his lack of a proper sheath. The alliance leader quickly organizes his forces, assigning units to the search and perimeter guard. His men respond with a sharp, unified salute, ready to follow his command. He then turns to Dan Hyung-woo, humbly thanking him for his invaluable help. He calmly tells the leader that there's nothing inside. The only thing waiting for them in that darkness is a lingering, bloody despair, a place filled with nothing but the ghosts of his past. The alliance leader notices his unease and tells him to leave the rest to them. With a command, the warriors charge into the darkness, leaving Hyung-woo behind. He reminds himself that since Cheonkija is dead, whatever happens in there is no longer his concern. But a quiet footstep breaks his train of thought. It's Jo Seol-yeon, who approaches him with a curious question about his past. Dan Hyung-woo simply nods, confirming her suspicions. Seol-yeon looks on, caught in the middle of the sudden tension. But Dan Hyung-woo's gaze hardens, his patience wearing thin. Peng Cheol-yong steps in, accusing him of being a spy for the Green Forest. Seol-yeon argues back, but the man suggests his heroic act was all a ruse. He then demands Hyung-woo's sword as a sign of good faith. His eyes gleam with greed as he inspects the blade up close. Though it appears old and worn, a powerful aura radiates from the hilt. An energy so sharp and potent, it's unlike anything he's ever seen. Hyung-woo's hand tightens on the grip, questioning the man's audacity. But Peng Cheol-yong just smirks, telling him to hand it over without a fuss. He explains that this sword was entrusted to him by a dead friend, and he would rather die than give it to anyone else. Peng Cheol-yong's eyes narrow with cold intent, a silent signal for his men to move. Two of his subordinates spring into action, one moving to block his retreat, while the other presses forward, attempting to trap him from both sides. But Dan Hyung-woo simply ducks under their coordinated assault, and in a flash of purple energy, slashes through both of them at once. His gaze remains utterly unfazed by the failed attack. Peng Cheol-yong can only watch, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. The two men are thrown back, their attack completely neutralized. They tumble helplessly down the rocky cliffside. Peng Cheol-yong makes one last threat, demanding the sword to avoid a beating. But Dan Hyung-woo's hand only tightens on the hilt, a dark energy swirling around it. A strange symbol glows on his forehead as his eyes burn with purple light. But the confrontation is interrupted by the furious shout of the alliance leader. Peng Cheol-yong freezes, caught in the act by his superior. The search party has returned from the cave, their expressions grim and empty-handed. The leader turns to his men, asking if they found what they were looking for. The other warriors gasp, realizing he's talking about Cheonkija's secret weapon. With their search yielding nothing, the alliance leader orders a full withdrawal. His warriors obey without question, beginning their descent from the mountain. Peng Cheol-yang shoots a final venomous glare, telling Hyung-woo he got lucky this time. Jo Seol-yeon rushes to his side, her voice filled with concern. He seems unsure how to answer her simple question, but his silence is enough to bring a wave of relief to her face. She then realizes they've never been properly introduced and offers her name, Jo Seol-yeon. He returns the gesture, finally revealing his own name is Dan Hyung-woo. For the first time, they stand as equals, a connection forming between them. Dan Hyung-woo then turns, reminding her that they must also prepare to leave. And so the Murim Alliance's journey to find Cheonkija's secret weapon came to an end. The story now shifts to the bustling city of Wuhan in the Hubei region. But a rumor has already begun to spread that the Alliance was successful in their quest. Speculation runs wild about the nature of the weapon, but its true form remains a tightly guarded secret. The whispers and rumors eventually reach the Murim Alliance headquarters itself. Inside, a fist slams down in frustration, unable to contain the growing pressure. The Alliance leader fumes, knowing that no one believes their claims that the weapon never existed. The Council of Elders informs him that the rumors have spread far beyond the city, engulfing the entire region. He begins to explain that the only things they found inside the cave at Hyeongsan Mountain were a simple wooden box and a letter left behind by Cheonkija. The Alliance leader recalls the moment they discovered the box in the desolate cave, along with a letter that held the final words of the legendary genius. But the writing was cryptic, its meaning a puzzle they couldn't immediately solve. It spoke of a mysterious figure known only as the Blood Demon Child, a person who was trying to plunge the entire martial world into chaos. To counter this threat, Cheonkija revealed he had raised 100 peerless masters, hoping that whoever found his message would use them to stop the coming darkness. And to control these powerful warriors, he left behind a special item in the box, a final, desperate gambit against an enemy he could not face alone. The Alliance leader opens the box, revealing the legendary yin-yang drum. He admits the yin-yang drum is surprising, but the letter's claims about the 100 masters are suspect. One of the elders asks if he believes the entire letter was a fabrication. But the Alliance leader suspects there is a mastermind manipulating events from the shadows. The strategist agrees, explaining that he too has his own suspicions. He believes the Green Forest's true goal was never the weapon, but simply to harm the Murim Alliance. The leader recalls how the enemy's bodies vanished from the battlefield, leaving no trace behind. And now, the rumors of their success are spreading like wildfire through the city. He concludes that this is a deliberate plot to draw the entire martial world's attention to them. The other elders are stunned, wondering who could possibly be orchestrating such a scheme. The strategist offers his first suspect, the head of the Zhou family, who brought them the map. The strategist admits that while the head of the Zhou family is likely not the mastermind, there could be a spy within their ranks, forcing the Alliance to monitor them closely. Because even if they aren't the main culprits, they could still be playing a part in the conspiracy. And to that end, they've prepared a special kind of surveillance. Meanwhile, at the grand estate of the Zhou family, a group of travelers finally returns home. An older man greets them, relieved to see they've arrived safely. Dan Hyung-woo takes in the sight, stunned by the sheer scale of the girl's home. The older man explains that he must first report to the family head, but will take Hyung-woo to the escort agency as promised. Our boy simply watches, a silent observer in this unfamiliar world of wealth and power. Jo Seol-yeon apologizes, admitting she had wanted to get him a sheath for his sword. Dan Hyung-woo reflects on the outside world's strange obsession with sheaths. He explains that no sheath could ever contain the blade's sharp energy, a power so immense it would simply shatter any casing. He concludes that, as he expected, he doesn't need one. Seol-yeon looks down, embarrassed by her presumptuous offer, but her simple apology strikes a painful chord within him. He's thrown back to the final moments of his friend, who uttered the very same word, a memory he can't seem to escape. He still doesn't understand why the one who was dying felt the need to apologize to him. He tells her with a quiet intensity that she should never, ever apologize to him again. Seol-yeon is taken aback by his sudden command, but quietly agrees. Just then, the older man calls out, telling Hyung-woo it's time to go. Without another word, Dan Hyung-woo turns to follow him. She watches him leave, a worried expression on her face, wondering if she upset him. They arrive at the Hanam Escort Agency, a bustling hub of activity even at night. The older man explains that Hyung-woo's first job will be as a porter, a simple worker tasked with carrying goods for the agency. He calls out to another man, assigning him to train the new recruit. The man assigned to train him sizes up the newcomer with a skeptical glance. The porter, a man named Jong Chil, eagerly accepts the task with a confident smirk. The director offers a quiet warning about Hyung-woo's nature, but Jong Chil dismisses it. He then turns to Dan Hyung-woo, telling him to learn well from his new mentor. Hyung-woo's silent gaze seems to unnerve the older man, who quickly takes his leave. With the director gone, Jong Chil's friendly demeanor vanishes, replaced by a menacing grin. He gets right in Hyung-woo's face, declaring it's time for the newbie's teachings. Dan Hyung-woo calmly gives his name, completely unfazed by the intimidation. The porter is immediately annoyed by his short, seemingly disrespectful tone. He begins to insult Hyung-woo's build, his anger rising at the lack of a proper reaction. The porter is stunned by Hyung-woo's simple response, his anger flaring. He threatens the newcomer, asking if he wants to die on his very first day. Dan Hyung-woo calmly registers the man's intense hostility, and his first instinct is to wonder if he should simply cut him down. The other porters watch as Jong Chil continues his tirade, baffled by the new guy's lack of fear. His threats escalate, his voice echoing through the agency courtyard. But Hyung-woo's expression remains unchanged, his mind processing the danger. It's a simple, cold calculation for a man who has only known survival. Jong Chil's eyes then land on the blade at Hyung-woo's side. He points, demanding to know why a lowly porter would carry a sword, and orders him to hand it over. Dan Hyung-woo's answer is calm, but his eyes are like steel. A dangerous light flickers in his gaze, a silent warning. The porter freezes, suddenly feeling an overwhelming killing intent. He quickly backs down, stammering that it's too late to continue the lesson. Hyung-woo quietly notes that an unusual number of people seem to want his blade. The other porters can't help but mock their boss for being scared off by the new guy. Humiliated, Jong Chil barks at the others to mind their own business and get to bed. The crowd quickly disperses, leaving Hyung-woo standing in the now quiet courtyard. The flustered porter tells him to follow, leading him towards the shared quarters. But as he walks away, he glances back, convinced the sword is the only thing that makes the newcomer a threat. He seethes with anger, vowing to repay the humiliation he suffered. Later that night, the other porters are fast asleep in their quarters. But Jong Chil rises from his bed, his mind set on revenge. He creeps through the darkness, searching for his target. He scans the room, certain that Dan Hyung-woo is sleeping somewhere among them. But his search is cut short by a sharp smack to the face. He stumbles back in pain, wondering if he walked into a pillar. But as he looks up, he sees a silent figure looming over him in the dark. A wave of terror washes over him as he realizes Dan Hyung-woo was never asleep at all. Our boy simply looks down, his expression calm and unbothered. The porter can't believe his eyes, wondering if the new guy is somehow sleeping on his feet. Seeing an opportunity, he decides to take the sword while his target is vulnerable. But Dan Hyung-woo's eyes are wide open, a silent, chilling stare. Jong Chil freezes mid-reach, his bravado instantly evaporating. For a split second, the porter's mind is flooded with a terrifying vision, feeling like helpless prey caught in the gaze of a predator, a primal fear that consumes his very soul. In that instant, he sees a clear vision of his own death. But it was all in his head, a delusion brought on by his own terror. A single, effortless kick sends the bully flying across the room. Dan Hyung-woo was merely circulating his protective energy while sleeping on his feet. It was a habit he hadn't always possessed. But during his long years trapped inside the cave, he learned to be vigilant at every moment, whether eating, resting, or sleeping. And so he developed the instinct to sleep standing up, his energy always flowing. As a new day dawns over the escort agency, Dan Hyung-woo lets out a quiet breath, his rest now complete. He looks down at the groaning porter, recalling the man's name was Jong Chil. The bully wakes up in a panic, staring at the newcomer in utter disbelief. Hyung-woo simply watches as the man scrambles away from a room of unconscious bodies. Jong Chil rouses the other porters for the day's labor, but Dan Hyung-woo is simply confused by the concept of work. Outside, the courtyard is filled with heavy crates, a daunting task for any normal man. But Hyung-woo simply lifts his hand and the crates begin to float into the air. He leaps between them with the footwork he perfected in the cave, landing with impossible grace. Each step precise and controlled. In a matter of seconds, he stands atop a perfectly stacked tower of goods. He looks down, finding this so-called porter work to be surprisingly easy. The other men can only stare, dumbfounded by the casual display of power. Dan Hyung-woo then offers to finish the rest of the work himself. The other porters can only shout in panic as the crates fly through the air. From a nearby doorway, they realize this newcomer is no ordinary man. But their gossip is cut short by the unexpected arrival of Jo Seol-yeon. Her mind drifts back to his strange command from the day before. A puzzle that kept her awake all night and brought her here to find him. Dan Hyung-woo turns, his work momentarily forgotten. She greets him with a newfound familiarity that surprises even herself. He simply tells her he started his new job as she asks if he's settling in. She fumbles for words, trying to find the right question to ask. But Dan Hyungwoo's answer is simple. He likes peace and hates anything that shatters it. Her expression softens as she listens to his quiet explanation. He tells her that hearing a friend apologize is something he truly hates. Realizing he considers her a friend, she happily promises never to say it again. But their quiet moment is shattered by the sound of approaching horses. A familiar, unwelcome face appears before them, a smug look on his face. It's Peng Cheol-yong, who greets Seol-yeon with a flowery compliment. She asks what brings the young master of the Peng family to the agency. He explains that the Muraim Alliance has sent him to provide support. But contrary to Dan Hyungwoo's simple wish for a peaceful life, the martial world was already being drawn into a whirlpool of blood and conflict. In a dark chamber, a man reports that their entire elite unit of 30 warriors has been wiped out. He kneels in shame, admitting they couldn't even identify the attacker. This was their Warning Heaven unit, a force strong enough to challenge the Muraim Alliance itself. From behind a curtain, a hand surrounded by dark energy emerges. The man recalls the brutal, one-sided slaughter of his men, who were tossed aside like dolls by an unseen power. And from the shadows, a single red eye gleams, learning they were all defeated by one person. The mysterious figure wonders if Cheonkija truly created 100 of these monsters. He grins, eager to see how these warriors will fare against the legendary blood demon child. And in a desolate mountain range, the true enemy's fortress looms under a purple sky. The lone survivor is brought before his master, his body a testament to their utter defeat. The shadowy leader gives a single chilling command. Investigate everyone who was at Hyungsan Mountain. He roars in fury, demanding to know who dared to wipe out his elite Warning Heaven unit. But back at the escort agency, the day is deceptively peaceful. Jo Seol-yeon looks on, a hint of concern on her face. Peng Cheol-yong offers a smug greeting, his admiration for her clear. But his gaze quickly turns to annoyance as he spots a familiar face. He can't understand why Dan Hyungwoo is standing by her side once again. He scoffs at the sight of a porter carrying a sword, offering a veiled threat. Seol-yeon's heart sinks, silently pleading for Youngwoo not to rise to the bait. But his attention is stolen by a new arrival, who teases him for his overly formal greeting. She introduces herself as Peng Mi-ryong, explaining she rushed here out of concern for Miss Jo. Just then, another man steps forward, his question directed squarely at Dan Hyungwoo. Our boy calmly confirms his identity, his gaze steady. The man, an escort warrior named Hyung Pyo, announces he's here to train the new porter for a mission. Seol-yeon is taken aback, wondering why he's being sent out so soon after starting. Peng Cheol-yong explains it's part of the job, privately relishing the chance to get Seol-yeon away from him. Dan Hyungwoo doesn't understand the mission, but makes it clear his sword is not up for negotiation. The escort warrior seems annoyed by his informal tone, but simply tells him to follow. Peng Cheol-yong smirks, taunting Hyungwoo for disrespecting his superior. Peng Mi-ryong watches her brother, finding his behavior childish for a vice leader. But her gaze shifts to Dan Hyungwoo, who remains completely unfazed by the taunts. As he turns to leave with the escort, Jo Seol-yeon calls out, asking where he's going. Peng Cheol-yong scoffs, assuming the porter is simply storming off in a huff. Seol-yeon can only watch, confused by the sudden turn of events. But Dan Hyungwoo simply explains that he's following orders so he doesn't get fired. His straightforward answer leaves her speechless, a quiet understanding passing between them. And with that, he follows the escort warrior, leaving her behind in the courtyard. It's revealed this was all part of the agency director's plan, a calculated move to keep Hyungwoo busy. He knows he must separate the mysterious porter from Seol-yeon before they grow any closer. The escort warrior seems confused by the director's vague instructions, but the older man simply tells him he'll understand once they meet. Hyung Pyo recalls the warning that Dan Hyungwoo is socially inept from living in the mountains. His eyes are drawn to the powerful blade at the porter's side. With a friendly smile, he asks if Hyungwoo has any training in swordsmanship. Dan Hyungwoo calmly replies that he knows the three-power sword technique. The escort warrior scoffs, dismissing it as a beginner's art for aspiring warriors. He draws his own blade, ready to offer a lesson to the newcomer. But Dan Hyungwoo's gaze remains steady, unimpressed by the display. The man then challenges him to demonstrate his so-called skills. Dan Hyungwoo's response is chillingly direct, asking if the man intends to kill him. The escort warrior is taken aback, explaining he only meant to spar and gauge their skills. But the concept of simply testing skills is foreign to Hyungwoo. He cuts the conversation short with a simple, unwavering statement. He's stronger. The escort warrior is left speechless by his blunt confidence. He laughs it off, unable to believe a newcomer could match his years of training. Dan Hyungwoo acknowledges his confidence, but offers to show him the path to true strength. He then gestures for the man to come forward, ready to begin the lesson. He considers for a moment. wondering if he should hold back his power. The escort warrior can only watch, completely baffled by the strange gesture. He admits this is the first time he's ever had to calculate how not to kill someone. He takes a moment to process the new parameters of this fight. With the mental math complete, he announces he's ready to proceed without lethal force. The escort warrior finally understands the director's cryptic warning about the newcomer. Shaking off his unease, he decides to test the boy's skills for himself. He brings his blade down with practiced speed and precision. But Dan Hyung-woo's eyes track the movement with unnerving calm. He gauges the incoming strike, finding it almost laughably slow. His solution to avoid killing is to aim for a non-fatal, yet terrifyingly precise target. And in a flash, he moves to execute his plan. He unleashes a torrent of energy from his blade, creating a pillar of light that erupts from the ground between them. The escort warrior can only stare in terror, completely overwhelmed by the attack. He's thrown backwards, his own technique utterly useless, and he crashes to the ground, the spar over in a single instant. Dan Hyung-woo looks down, his expression unchanged. The escort warrior lies defeated, his mind struggling to comprehend what just happened. Our boy then asks with genuine curiosity if the fall hurt him. Hyung-pyo can only ask what kind of impossible martial art he just witnessed. Dan Hyung-woo calmly explains it was the same beginner's technique he mentioned, a move called Heaven Thunder. Hyung-pyo sits in defeat, recognizing the technique but not its impossible power. He realizes this newcomer is a supreme master, wondering if the director knew all along. But Dan Hyung-woo simply reaffirms his earlier blunt statement. The escort warrior sighs, seeing a child's innocence behind the overwhelming skill. He decides his new mission is to teach this powerful but naive man how to navigate the world. Reaching out a hand, he realizes his lesson won't be about martial arts. Dan Hyung-woo watches, unfamiliar with the gesture. Hyung-pyo explains that this is how you help someone up, a basic act of kindness. Our boy looks down, processing this simple foreign concept. And for the first time, he reaches out, helping his new mentor to his feet. And so, Dan Hyung-woo's training in the ways of the world begins. Hyung-pyo is stunned to learn that his new charge really does sleep standing up. His lessons range from reading and writing to the basic etiquette of society. But some lessons are harder to learn, as Hyung-pyo frantically tries to teach him about public decency. The escort warrior is completely flustered by his student's lack of social awareness. Dan Hyung-woo, however, remains completely unfazed by his mentor's panic. A lesson that escalates when Hyung-pyo realizes what he's about to do next. From a distance, Jo Seol-yeon watches the strange pair with a thoughtful expression. Meanwhile, the Maram Alliance puts its own plan into motion, assigning a secret mission. Their target is the Jo family, who they must watch for any connection to the Green Forest attack. A female warrior pledges her loyalty to the Alliance leader's command. Her surveillance reveals nothing suspicious, except for Dan Hyung-woo's chaotic training. Her gaze shifts to Jo Seol-yeon, who watches the scene from a balcony above. The spy smirks, noting the young lady's unusual taste in men. But Seol-yeon's expression is one of genuine fondness for Dan Hyung-woo. She sees him not as a strange wanderer, but as a true member of the agency. But Hyung-woo's new life is about to be interrupted by another journey. The agency director sees off a group, entrusting an important mission to escort leader Ma-yuk. The man, a veteran warrior named Ma-yuk, promises to succeed in the agency's name. And with a final command, he leads his team out on their new escort mission. But elsewhere in the city, a new group of warriors arrives with purpose. Their presence is immediately noticed by the members of the Hanam escort agency. The commotion draws a crowd of curious onlookers. The escort warriors watch with grim expressions, sensing the importance of these visitors. A trio of elite warriors announces they are the Rising Dragon Unit, here on behalf of the Muram Alliance. They are greeted by the head of the Jo family, Jo Il-hyun. He welcomes them into his home, inviting them to sit. The family head recognizes Pung Cheol-young, known as the Blade Dragon. He then turns his attention to the other half of the famed duo. The second warrior introduces himself as Nam-gung-jin, the Sword Dragon. And the third member is Pung Mi-ryung, the Blade Dragon's younger sister. The family head acknowledges the Pung family's prestigious reputation in the region. He even suggests she would be a fine match for his own son, Jo-in. He hopes their stay will foster a closer relationship between the younger generation. The Sword Dragon politely thanks him for the opportunity to stay. But Pung Mi-ryung's expression is unreadable as she takes a quiet sip. But this friendly visit is a cover for their true mission, to investigate the Jo family's connection to the Green Forest. A mission her brother seems to have forgotten in his pursuit of Jo Seol-yeon. Meanwhile, Jo Seol-yeon is busy with her own training, her focus on the blade. Her eyes are filled with a quiet determination, a warrior in her own right. Peng Mi-ryung realizes Seol-yeon's gaze isn't for her brother, but for the mysterious porter. But Peng Chil-yong isn't worried in the slightest. He's confident that with Hyung-woo gone for months, he'll have all the time he needs to win her heart. Meanwhile, Dan Hyung-woo and his escort team take a break from their long journey. For the first time in what feels like a lifetime, he's about to enjoy a hot, freshly cooked meal. He lifts the food with a solemn reverence, a simple pleasure that still feels entirely new to him. The taste is a wave of pure, unadulterated joy. He savors the moment, a reminder of the world he's slowly rejoining. His mentor, Hyung-pyo, can only watch, remarking that he eats with the intensity of a sacred ritual. Hyung-pyo explains their destination is Sichuan, the ancestral home of the powerful Tang clan. Their client is the Sichuan Tang family, who have come to meet them in person. An elder from the family, Tang Ho-guan, watches them with a stern expression. Beside him stands another family member, a younger man named Tang Chol-gi. Hyung-pyo continues his explanation to a still-eating Dan Hyung-woo. He notes that the Tang family has even sent their own elite guard warriors, a level of security that hints at the incredible value of the goods they're escorting. Dan Hyung-woo simply listens, his focus still on the simple pleasure of his meal. A butterfly lands on the elder's hat, drawn by what he calls a pleasant fragrance. But with a flick of his finger, he dismisses the insect as a bothersome pest. With a casual flick of his finger, the elder disintegrates the insect in a burst of energy. But his gaze is fixed on the group of porters across the way. The younger man notices his focus, asking what has caught his attention. The elder explains that he senses a powerful, unusual aura from one of them. His companion immediately tenses, demanding to know which one it is. The elder's eyes scan the group, passing over the others. Before landing on Dan Hyung-woo, who remains completely oblivious to their scrutiny, just then the escort team's leader, Mayuk, rides up on his horse. He reports to the elder that all preparations for their departure are complete. The elder looks up, mistaking the leader's powerful presence for the aura he sensed. The elder dismisses his own senses, assuming the powerful aura belongs to the escort leader. With the meal over, escort leader Mayuk barks out his orders. He declares they must reach Sichuan in half the usual time, as speed is their agency's creed. The other porters can only sweat, daunted by the impossible deadline. Hyung-pyo quietly warns another that anyone who can't keep up will be left behind. And with a final command, the escort leader signals for their departure. But Dan Hyung-woo finds the warning strange, a concept he can't quite grasp. For a man who has only ever known how to push forward, falling behind isn't an option. And so their grueling journey begins, a blur of motion across the countryside. The porters are forced to run, already struggling to match the relentless pace. Hyung-pyo struggles to keep up, begging for a rest, but Dan Hyung-woo doesn't even understand the concept of falling behind. The entire escort team is pushed to its limits, a frantic rush through the forest. They run from dawn until dusk, never once breaking their stride. Even when they finally stop, Hyung-pyo is stunned to find Dan Hyung-woo sleeping on his feet. But the break is short-lived, and soon the wheels are turning once more. Dan Hyung-woo runs alongside the heavy cart, his pace steady and effortless. Suddenly, a spear flies out from the trees, signaling an ambush. But the escort leader, Ma-yuk, catches it with ease, his expression hardening. He holds the weapon, a clear declaration of war from an unseen enemy. With his own blade drawn, he prepares to face the attackers head-on. He deflects another spear, his eyes scanning the trees for the source. The escort leader demands to know who dares to attack them, but a voice from the woods turns the question right back at him. A group of bandits emerges from the forest, their intentions clear. Their leader declares this is Green Forest territory, demanding they leave their cargo or their lives. The Tang family elder seems unconcerned, telling his men to simply watch. Hyung-pyo reassures Dan Hyung-woo that they'll just pay a toll, but our boy recognizes the name. Mayuk tosses a string of coins, ordering the bandits to take their fee and clear the path. The bandit leader catches the payment with a greedy, knowing smirk. But instead of accepting it, he crushes the coins in his hand with a surge of power. He roars that a pittance won't do, demanding they hand over everything. Without warning, the bandit leader leaps into the air, his axe raised high. Hyung-pyo shouts in alarm at the sudden attack, but Dan Hyung-woo is already watching. He calmly notes the man's overwhelming killing intent. The bandit brings his weapon down with brutal force on the escort leader, but Mayuk meets the attack head-on, his own blade raised to defend. The impact sends a shockwave through the air as the escort leader takes the full force of the blow. Mayuk is thrown from his horse, crashing to the ground in a heap. The bandit leader laughs, mocking the agency before ordering his men to sweep them all away. And with a unified roar, the rest of the bandits charge into the fray. The escort warriors panic, realizing they're hopelessly outnumbered. The Tang family elder senses these are no ordinary thugs, demanding to know who backs them. The bandit leader only laughs, proudly declaring their allegiance to the Green Forest. He charges forward, telling the old man it's an honor to fall by his hand. But the elder's expression turns cold as he points a single finger, lamenting that they weren't just common thieves. A projectile flies from his hand, slamming into a tree with a burst of purple energy. A single deadly needle is left embedded in the wood. The bandit leader's eyes widen in disbelief. He looks down at a gaping hole in his chest, unable to comprehend the power of such a small weapon. His body dissolves into shadow as he collapses, defeated in an instant. The remaining bandits can only stare in terror at the sudden display of power. The elder reveals his true weapons, warning them for daring to touch the Tang family's cargo. He unleashes a storm of deadly needles, a furious counterattack. The glowing projectiles rain down upon the helpless bandits. Each one finds its mark with lethal precision, cutting through the remaining attackers with ease. But just as the battle seems over, a new group emerges from the trees. The elite Death Spirit Corps, who declare they can't back down now. Their leader relays a chilling order from their master: leave no survivors. The Tang family elder's expression hardens, knowing the real fight is about to begin. The Tang family elder declares that failure is not an option. The goods must reach their destination. The younger man rallies his hand-picked warriors, ordering them to protect the cargo to the very end. The Death Spirit Corps charges forward with a single brutal command: leave no one alive. And the clearing erupts into a maelstrom of blades and blood. The escort warriors fight desperately, their swords clashing against the relentless assault. Mayuk watches the chaos unfold, but Dan Young-woo remains a calm, still point in the storm. The younger Tang family member calmly orders his men to hold their formation, but the elite attackers are too much, cutting down the agency's men one by one. Mayuk realizes with fury that they're no match for these masters, and the Tang family has no intention of helping. The brutal reality of the fight hits home as Yongpyo takes a devastating blow. Dan Hyung-woo's eyes narrow, a flicker of something cold and dangerous in his gaze. As another attacker moves in to finish the job, Hyung-woo's mind flashes back to a simpler moment, a shared meal with his new mentor. And with that memory, his blade ignites with a brilliant, crackling energy. He unleashes the Heaven Thunder, a pillar of pure power that tears through the battlefield. The enemy warrior is caught in the blast, their form dissolving in the blinding light. The younger Tang family member can only stare in disbelief at the sudden turn of events. The other attackers are stunned, wondering if lightning itself just struck from a clear sky. But Hyung-pyo recognizes the impossible power, realizing it's the same technique Hyung-woo used on him. He immediately shouts for Hyung-woo to use that power to save the others. Dan Hyung-woo's answer is simple. He saved Hyung-pyo because it was him. His mentor desperately begs him to save the others, calling them all companions. But all around them, the slaughter continues, with the agency's men falling one by one. Even the porters plead for their lives, explaining they are just simple workers. The concept of comrades is still foreign to Dan Hyung-woo, but because his mentor asked, he agrees to help them. And with that simple decision, he leaps into the fray. The other porters can only watch in stunned silence as he moves. He finds an escort warrior about to be overwhelmed by an attacker, and in a flash, he's there, effortlessly blocking the fatal blow. The Tang family elder watches the chaos, his expression cold and calculating. The enemy warriors taunt him, confident that his hidden weapons are useless against them. But a bead of sweat traces his cheek as he wonders what impossible speed just flashed past him. Only a master of his caliber could even faintly perceive Dan Hyung-woo's movement. Our boy looks back over his shoulder, calmly asking if that was a sufficient display. He then unleashes a storm of lightning that tears through the remaining attackers. Dan Hyung-woo stands perfectly still, the battle now over. The entire enemy force is reduced to nothing but dust on the wind. The younger Tang family member can only stare, unable to believe their elite Death Spirit Corps was wiped out. Elsewhere, their leader, Umun Hae, questions her subordinate's failed assessment of their targets. Her subordinate apologizes, admitting their intelligence missed a powerful master. But Umun Hae decides she must investigate this unknown variable herself. A dangerous smile plays on her lips as she accepts the challenge. The story shifts to the grand estate of the powerful Umun clan. The clan head, Umun Hwang, learns what the escort team is truly protecting. His subordinate confirms they are transporting legendary thunder grenades, a weapon created by the descendants of the long-lost Thunder Sect. Umun Hwang considers the implications of such a powerful weapon returning to the world. He knows that 5 wagon loads of these grenades could be enough to wipe entire regions off the map. He crushes the life from a small bird, declaring they must seize the grenades for themselves. But his subordinate reveals that Umun Hae has already left with the Death Spirit Corps. The clan head roars in fury, demanding to know where she's gone, learning she's near Pyeongjeong Mountain. And at that very moment, Umun Hae rides hard through the forest, a confident, dangerous smile playing on her lips. Back on the battlefield, the aftermath is grim. Though Dan Hyung-woo won the fight, the agency's losses were catastrophic. Only the heavily injured escort leader Mayuk and Hyung Pyo survived the slaughter, along with a handful of porters, who are left trembling in fear. The younger Tang family member suggests hiring a new agency, but the elder insists they must see this contract through. The younger man argues, questioning why they'd trust a broken escort team when they have his uncle's power. The younger man is stunned, congratulating his uncle for mastering the family's secret technique. But the elder admits he wasn't the one who unleashed that power, and could barely even see it himself. His nephew is left in disbelief, demanding to know who it could have been. The elder, Tang Ho Guan, narrows his eyes, certain of what he saw. He reveals it was the quiet porter with the sword, his gaze now fixed on Dan Hyung Woo. He approaches our boy, demanding to know which sect he belongs to. But Dan Hyung Woo doesn't understand the question, so the elder clarifies he means where he trained. His mind flashes back to Cheonkija, explaining that the master never taught him anything, but simply threw him and the others into a living hell. He declares that his martial arts are his alone, forged in the crucible of countless life-or-death battles. Dan Hyung-woo's simple denial leaves the elder completely speechless. The old man explodes with disbelief, unable to accept that such power has no origin. The younger Tang member panics, scolding Hyung-woo for his blatant disrespect. But Hyung Pyo quickly steps in, trying to smooth things over with a desperate explanation. The elder considers the situation, realizing they need the boy's arrogant strength for the mission. He also notices that Hyung-woo seems to listen to his mentor, giving him an idea. He turns to Hyung Pyo, offering an unexpected compliment that leaves the escort warrior confused. The elder then promotes him to leader of the escort, a move designed to keep Hyung-woo in check. Hyung Pyo is left completely stunned by the sudden weight of command. But the injured Mayuk confirms the order, entrusting the mission to him while he goes for help. The other porters look to Hyung Pyo, their new unexpected leader. He feels the immense pressure, knowing he must now take responsibility for the mission. Steeling his resolve, he accepts the command, vowing to get them to Sichuan safely. The elder agrees, telling them to rest for the night and depart in the morning. But the younger Tang member is still reeling from the battle's impossible conclusion. His mind struggles to accept that the quiet porter is a supreme master of heaven thunder. Dan Hyung-woo simply watches, unfazed by the sudden shift in command. And so their journey continues, now with Hyung Pyo at the helm. Meanwhile, the injured Mayuk rides hard, racing back to the agency for help. He knows that even with Hyung-woo's power, they'll be overwhelmed without reinforcements. But his desperate ride is cut short by a sudden, chilling realization. He senses another force moving towards the agency, a race he knows he's about to lose. From the shadows, a new enemy watches, a deadly weapon reflected in their eye. A chained blade whips through the air, striking him from his horse with brutal precision. He crashes to the ground, his mission to get help ending in failure. The weapon retracts into the darkness, its deadly work complete. And from the trees, a unit of masked assassins descends upon the scene. The Ghost Mask Hands, an elite assassination unit serving the legendary Blood Demon Child. Their leader confirms the messenger has been silenced. And with that, they turn their sights to their true target, the Zhou family estate. Inside the Zhou family estate, two men work late into the night. The younger of the two insists they finish, refusing to procrastinate. But the older man's focus suddenly shifts, his hand freezing in place as ink drips from his brush. He senses a powerful, hostile presence approaching the estate, and in an instant the quiet night is shattered. The sound of a body hitting the ground echoes from the courtyard. A guard falls, his last breath a question for his unseen killers. A desperate cry for help rings out, signaling an enemy ambush. But the older man's expression is grim, as if he was expecting this all along. The assassins charge forward, their leader giving the brutal command to leave no one alive. The head of the Zhou family bursts out, demanding to know who dares to attack his home. But his captain holds him back, telling him to stand down. The family head is stunned, questioning why his captain is stopping him. The captain explains that the killing intent he senses is far too powerful for him to handle alone. Outside, the estate's guards are already being cut down in a brutal, one-sided slaughter. The captain insists that the family head has a more important place to be right now. And with that, he turns and rushes back into the main building. He bursts into a room, startling Jo Seol-yeon with his urgent arrival. He tells her she must leave immediately, ordering her to prepare for a hasty escape. She's stunned by the chaos, asking what will become of her father. Outside, the night is filled with the desperate screams of the dying. The Ghost Mask Hands cut down anyone who stands in their way. Their leader then gives a new command: destroy the Hanam escort agency as well. Meanwhile, the captain leads a desperate escape on horseback, fleeing into the night with Jo Seol-yeon and a few loyal guards. Behind them, the grand estate is consumed by a raging inferno. She looks back in horror, realizing the flames have spread to the agency next door. The captain urges her to keep moving, telling her they can't stop now. but she argues that her father is still back there, though he reminds her of the man's strength. He is Jo Il-hyun, the Spear of Hanam, and he is ready to defend his home. He swings his legendary weapon with incredible force, unleashing a shockwave that tears through the estate. A man whose reputation as a peerless warrior is well earned. The ghost mask hands recognize their target, the head of the Jo family, but Jo Il-hyun meets their assault with a furious determination. He stands as a one-man army against the tide of assassins. The captain reminds the others that this sacrifice is for their sake. Her brother agrees, telling Seol-yeon they must have faith in their father's strength. But when the captain asks the Rising Dragon unit for help, they coldly refuse, abandoning them to their fate. Jo-in is left in stunned disbelief by their callous betrayal. But Peng Mi-ryong reminds them of the assassin's skill, insisting they must report this to the Alliance. Her brother agrees, but worries they'll be hunted down before they can get help. But Seol-yeon's gaze hardens, realizing there's only one person she can truly rely on. Her mind flashes back to the overwhelming power of the porter who saved them at Hyeongsan Mountain. The captain makes a decision, telling them they'll find another way to survive. He wishes the others well as they part ways, their paths now diverging. He then turns to Seol-yeon, telling her they must ride for Sichuan to find the escort team. She agrees through her tears, putting all her faith in Dan Hyung-woo, and she prays that her father can hold on until she returns with help. Back at the estate, the ghost mask hands stand over the bodies of the fallen. Jo Il-hyun's hand tightens on his spear, his clothes stained from the brutal fight. He demands to know who they are and why they've brought this destruction to his family. The assassins remain silent as a shadowy figure emerges from their ranks. The leader mocks him, saying he has no intention of answering a dead man. With a furious roar, the family head demands the coward show his face. The shadowy figure responds with a devastating attack, a blur of dark energy. But he's stunned to see that his opponent is somehow still standing. Jo Il-hyun looks up, a flicker of recognition as he utters a familiar name. But the assassin coldly declares that he has long since thrown that name away. A shadowy figure stands amidst the ruins, laughing at the pile of ashes that was once the Jo family estate. His subordinate reports that the assassins are now pursuing the last of the family's bloodline. But the man still doesn't understand the reason for this attack, questioning why the legendary blood demon child would target this specific family. The master's red eye gleams as he asks if the man knows of his relationship with Cheonkija. The subordinate confirms he knew them as lifelong, bitter rivals. The blood demon child explains that he is the sole survivor of that rivalry. He reveals that this very estate was the first place Cheonkija planned to raise the 100 masters meant to stop him. And so, this was the natural place to begin tearing down his enemy's grand design. He gives a final, chilling order. Not a single member of the Jo family's bloodline can be allowed to escape. Meanwhile, the survivors ride hard through the night, a desperate flight for their lives. The captain realizes their pursuers are closing in, knowing they're just short of reaching the escort team. But Jo-in is already at his limit, his body failing him. He struggles to keep pace, a clear target for the assassins in the dark. The captain shouts back, urging him to hold on just a little longer. But Jo-in tells them to go on, prioritizing his sister's escape over his own. As the captain refuses, a chained blade whips through the air. Jo-in knows he's the weak link that will get them all killed. And in an instant, the weapon finds its mark, ending his desperate struggle. The captain and Seol-yeon can only watch in horror as her brother falls. He's struck from his horse, his final act a sacrifice for his sister. A desperate scream tears from Seol-yeon's throat, her world shattering around her. But the assassins don't stop, their relentless pursuit continuing without pause. One of them leaps forward, his blade aimed squarely at the last heir of the Jo family. The blow lands, sending her reeling from the force of the attack. And in the chaos, her loyal captain is also cut down. The ghost mask hands stand victorious, their mission nearly complete. With his last breath, the captain calls out her name, lamenting his failure to protect the one person he swore to keep safe. Seol-yeon kneels in despair, realizing her father and brother are both gone. The assassin leader mocks her, admitting she was skilled at running away. But he raises his blade, declaring that her desperate escape ends now. With tears streaming down her face, she begs for anyone to save her, a desperate plea to live. But just as the blade falls, a brilliant flash of blue lightning erupts from the darkness. The assassin's weapon is shattered in an instant by the unseen force. Seol-yeon looks up, a flicker of hope in her tear-filled eyes. And through the storm of energy, a familiar figure appears. It's Dan Hyung-woo, who has arrived just in the nick of time. His gaze is fixed and cold as he confirms that he heard her call. And for the first time since the attack began, she feels a wave of relief wash over her. Back with the escort team, their journey continues through the dark forest. But Dan Hyung-woo suddenly stops, his posture rigid and alert. Her desperate plea for help echoes in his mind, reaching him across the impossible distance. Hyung-pyo notices his distress, asking what could possibly be wrong. But Hyung-woo simply tells him that he'll be back in a moment. His mentor can only watch in confusion as he prepares to leave. And with a desperate shout of his name, Dan Hyung-woo vanishes into the night. Back in the present, he confirms that he definitely heard it. Her voice calling out to him for help. The assassin raises his blade, ready to end the last of the Jo family bloodline. Her final desperate plea echoes through the night, a prayer to be saved. And a storm of crackling blue energy answers her call, shattering the assassin's blade before it can find its mark. A lone figure emerges from the chaos, a silent protector. Dan Hyung-woo stands before her, his gaze fixed and cold. He confirms that he heard her call across the impossible distance. A single name escapes her lips, a mix of disbelief and hope. He now stands as the only thing between her and the assassins. The ghost mask hands can only stare, stunned by his sudden arrival. With his last breath, her loyal captain entrusts her safety to the newcomer. Dan Hyung-woo gives a silent nod, accepting the man's final wish. The captain's last breath is a quiet acceptance, knowing she is finally safe. But the assassin's leader scoffs, ordering his men to kill the newcomer. Hyung-woo places a gentle hand on Seo-yeon's head, a wave of warmth spreading through her. She feels the terror and exhaustion of the long night simply melt away. He tells her to wipe the tears from her eyes, and with a promise to finish this quickly, he turns to face the enemy. He leaps into the air, a silent, deadly blur. He weaves through their formation, a storm of impossible speed and precision. The assassins can only scream, overwhelmed by a martial art they've never seen before. He lands in a low crouch, the last of the lightning fading from his blade. Jo Seo-yeon can only watch, realizing that nearly 20 elite assassins were wiped out in a single instant. She wonders if she had possessed even a fraction of his strength. If she could have been the one to protect her family from this tragedy. Dan Hyung-woo places a hand on a rock, marking a temporary grave for her fallen captain. He makes a quiet promise to return and give the loyal man a proper burial. With no one left, Seo-yeon asks him what she's supposed to do now. Her father and brother are gone, and she is utterly alone in the world. But that single word strikes a deep, familiar chord within Dan Hyung-woo. Because he too knows what it's like to survive a living hell all by himself. He remembers she was the first person to reach out to him in this strange new world. And so he offers her the one thing he knows how to give, the will to live. He tells her to live with gratitude for the fallen and to do whatever she wants. The question hangs in the air, a concept she's never had to consider. But with a newfound resolve, she declares she wants to join the escort mission. Dan Hyung-woo takes her hand, a silent acceptance of her decision. He simply tells her to hold on tight, a small smile on his face. She can only look on in confusion, a tear still tracing her cheek. And in an instant, he leaps, launching them both into the sky. She can only stare in disbelief as they soar through the air, leaving her old life behind. She realizes this is more than a simple technique. It's like soaring through the clouds. And in the rush of the wind, the last of her tears are finally blown away. His silent action provides more comfort than any words ever could. She marvels at his impossible power, a skill he uses as casually as taking a stroll. He had turned the assassins who overwhelmed her family into nothing but ash. She has to ask how he became so strong when they're not so different in age. Dan Hyung-woo's answer is simple. This is what happens when you fight for your life. A question hangs in the air as she wonders who he could have been fighting. His response is a single chilling word: demons. She asks if he means monsters, and he quietly confirms that's one way to see it. She asks him to tell her more about his story, about the demons he fought. Dan Hyung-woo's gaze turns distant, lost in the memories of that hell. He explains that to tell that story, he'd have to relive the endless battles against monstrous foes. He would have to walk back through the memories of his 99 fallen friends, all to reach the man responsible for their suffering, their master, Cheonkija. But since the master is already dead, his quest for revenge came to a bitter end. He promises to tell her the full story another time, putting the past aside for now. And with a final, graceful leap, they land back at the escort team's camp. Seo-yeon is stunned as a familiar face rushes to greet them. Hyung-pyo can only stare in disbelief, wondering why the young miss has suddenly appeared. He then reveals the one truth he holds on to. He doesn't believe Cheonkija is dead. Seo-yeon can only listen, stunned by the impossible claim. She asks if he truly believes the man responsible for his suffering is still alive, but their conversation is cut short as they finally land back at the camp. A familiar voice calls out her name in a panic. Hyung-pyo rushes forward, his face a mask of confusion and concern. He's left speechless as she delivers the news that the Jo family and the agency are gone. The other porters begin to despair, realizing they've just lost their jobs and their home. Seol-yeon apologizes for bringing this terrible news to them in the middle of their journey, but Hyung-pyo dismisses her apology, knowing she is the one who is suffering the most. He knows the team's morale has been shattered by the news, and that he must find a clever way to rally them for the journey ahead. He tries to inspire the men, reminding them of the large payment waiting at the end of this mission, a payment that could even help them rebuild their agency with her as their new leader. His words seem to reach her, cutting through her grief for a moment. She finds a new resolve, realizing she has a duty to the survivors of her family. A duty that includes growing strong enough to one day avenge her fallen loved ones. Dan Hyung-woo, however, simply asks if it's time for them to leave. And with their spirits lifted, Hyung-pyo gives the command to resume the escort. The Tang family elder watches them go, telling his nephew to ignore the girl and focus on the mission. The elder admits he was shocked when Hyung-woo vanished, but his power is too valuable to lose. And so the team continues its relentless pace, now with 2 new members. Seol-yeon's mind races, trying to process his story about fighting monsters. She can't imagine what kind of hell he must have endured to become so strong. She turns to him, asking to hear more about what he was saying earlier. She needs to know if the legendary master Cheonkija is truly dead. She confirms the official story, that he passed away a decade ago. Dan Hyung-woo's hope fades, realizing his quest for revenge is truly over. But Hyung-pyo suddenly interjects, declaring that he doesn't believe the official story. His bold claim catches both Seol-yeon and Dan Hyung-woo completely by surprise. Dan Hyung-woo's eyes narrow, a flicker of hope as he asks for confirmation. Hyung-pyo explains that the rumors of his death are too suspicious, with no clear origin. It's as if someone deliberately spread the lie across the entire martial world. Seol-yeon wonders who could possibly be behind such a widespread deception. He offers a chilling theory, that the master wanted to escape the world's notice, and so he faked his own death. She can't believe the legendary genius would spread news of his own demise. Dan Hyung-woo recalls that this all happened a decade ago, but their conversation is cut short by the Tang family elder, who orders them to halt. He apologizes to an unseen party, admitting they've caused some trouble. A man explains that their carriage has broken down, a wheel having fallen off. He asks if the escort team would be willing to take his lady with them. But the Tang family elder recognizes the crest on the carriage as belonging to the Umun clan. He's immediately suspicious, knowing that such a coincidence is highly unlikely. But as he's about to refuse, the carriage door opens. A woman emerges, introducing herself as Umun Hae, the daughter of the clan's leader. The other porters are immediately captivated by her stunning appearance. But Dan Hyung-woo remains completely unmoved by the sudden commotion. Umun Hae steps forward, her movements graceful and deliberate. And with an effortless leap, she lands before them, ready to make her case. She moves with an almost weightless grace. Her beauty so captivating it leaves the entire escort team spellbound. Even the stern Tang family elder is momentarily stunned by her appearance. She descends like a butterfly, landing softly before the awestruck men. And without a word, she settles herself directly on top of the precious cargo. She makes herself comfortable, a subtle, knowing smile on her lips. Hyung-pyo immediately objects, knowing it's against all protocol to let a stranger near the goods. But Dan Hyung-woo is the only one who remains completely unmoved by the display. The flustered elder quickly caves, agreeing to take her as far as the next town. His nephew can only stare in disbelief, realizing even his uncle has fallen under her spell. She offers a disarming smile, thanking them for their kindness. Hyung-pyo and the others can only stammer, completely captivated by her presence. The Tang family elder tries to object, suggesting she ride in a more comfortable wagon. But she insists on staying, claiming she's the one who needs their help. She settles in beside Dan Hyung-woo, who remains the only one completely unfazed. The elder relents, deciding the cargo is safe as long as that porter is guarding it. And with that, he gives the command for the escort team to move out. A subtle, knowing smirk plays on Umun Hae's lips as they begin to move. She quietly instructs her hidden followers to communicate only through sound transmission. Her subordinate confirms their intel. The escort team has only 1 true warrior and 30 porters. Her eyes scan the group, confirming that Elder Tang is the only true master among them. The other porters are completely smitten, unable to even look in her direction. And she knows that under such weak protection, 5 wagons of thunder grenades are ripe for the taking. A legendary weapon created by the long-lost Thunder Sect. A power that once allowed the sect to grow to incredible heights. But ironically, that same power was the cause of their eventual downfall. After vanishing for centuries, the grenades have somehow resurfaced in the world. She had assumed the grenades were used to wipe out her Death Spirit Core, but found no evidence. Which leaves a single burning question. Who could have possibly annihilated her elite unit? Her gaze then shifts, a silent question directed at the man beside her. She observes that he's dressed as a porter, yet carries a sword with no apparent skill. He seems completely unremarkable, yet she can't seem to look away. And then a shocking realization dawns on her. Since her arrival, the porter hasn't spared her a single glance. She can't comprehend how any man could be so immune to her charms. Frustrated, she decides to call out to the mysterious porter. Dan Hyungwoo turns, but only because he was the one being addressed. But his simple, direct gaze sends a strange flutter through her. A feeling she recognizes as pure humiliation washes over her. She vows that one way or another, she will make Dan Hyungwoo kneel before her. As night falls, the exhausted porters finally get a moment to rest. But Dan Hyungwoo stands apart from the others, a silent figure in the woods. He's approached by Jo Seol-yeon, who carries a warm bowl of soup. She finds him in the quiet darkness, a simple offering in her hands. But their moment is shattered by the sudden intrusive arrival of Umun Haye. She grabs Dan Hyungwoo, pulling him away from the camp in a blur of motion. She whispers a challenge, telling him to follow her into the forest if he wants answers. And with a final taunt, she leaps away, daring him to prove he can keep up. She's confident she can lure him in with the promise of her clan's martial arts. And she hopes her incredible speed will be enough to finally break his stoic confidence. She tells him not to disappoint her as she vanishes into the trees. But in the very next instant, he's right there, waiting for her. His expression is completely unchanged, his gaze steady. Umanhaya can only stare in disbelief, unable to comprehend his impossible speed. Back at the camp, the sudden commotion doesn't go unnoticed. Hyungpyo recognizes the young lady's voice and rallies the others to follow. But Jo Seol-yeon can only look on, a worried question on her lips. Dan Hyungwoo, however, remains completely unfazed by the woman's shock. She knows her own skills are among the best in her clan, leaving her to wonder about the true identity of this mysterious porter. He cuts to the chase, demanding to know Cheonkija's location before his soup gets cold. She's taken aback, admitting she has no idea where the legendary master is. And she's completely baffled by his strange fixation on a bowl of soup, a meal that Jo Seol-yeon had just brought for him back at the camp. With no answers, Dan Hyungwoo simply turns to leave, but she desperately tries to stop him. But their confrontation is interrupted by the arrival of her furious guards. They accuse him of harming their lady, threatening to end his life for the disrespect. But Uman-hee quickly shouts for them to stand down, knowing this is a fight they can't win. Dan Hyungwoo's gaze turns cold, a silent warning to the overzealous guards. And in an instant, they're frozen in place, paralyzed by an unseen force. But by the time Hyungpyo arrives, Dan Hyungwoo is nowhere to be found. Umun Haye is left speechless, realizing his movement wasn't a technique. He simply vanished. And in a blur of motion, he's already back at the camp, reappearing right before a very surprised Jo Seol-yeon. Her eyes widen, trying to process his impossible return. She looks down at her hands, suddenly realizing the soup bowl is gone. Dan Hyungwoo is already enjoying the meal he was so worried about. He calmly notes that the soup didn't get cold, leaving Seol-yeon completely baffled. When she asks about the woman he left with, he simply says she'll return when she wants to. Seol-yeon can't help but comment on how beautiful Lady Uman is. Seol-yeon stammers in agreement, admitting the woman is beautiful enough to charm any man. She then turns to Dan Hyungwoo, asking for his own opinion of her. His gaze meets hers, his expression unreadable as he considers the question. Her eyes are wide with anticipation, waiting for his answer. But his response is brutally honest. She's not as pretty as the other woman. He then adds that he doesn't like pretty women anyway. Seol-yeon is left completely baffled by his strange logic. He explains that in his experience, the temptation of a beautiful woman only leads to death. Meanwhile, Uman-hee has regrouped with her men, her mind fixed on the porter. She's certain he's the master who wiped out her death spirit core, but decides to observe him for now. Uman-hee is left wondering what kind of man Dan Hyungwoo truly is. Before they know it, the escort agency's long journey has almost reached Sichuan. But Seol-yeon can't stop thinking about his strange warning, wondering what kind of life he's lived. Just then, Hyungpyo approaches her with a word of caution. He warns her to be careful from now on, sensing a strange tension in the air. A tension that only grows as they press onward. The danger Hyungpyo sensed is real, and the Tang family members feel it even more strongly. He knows they'll arrive tomorrow, but one final threat remains. The Black Snake Hall, a group that has grown rapidly in the last decade, becoming the only real threat to the Tang family's power. And now the escort team is heading straight into their territory. The Tang family elder breaks into a cold sweat, wondering if there's a traitor in their midst. Seol-yeon relays a warning from Hyungpyo, but Dan Hyungwoo calmly adds the number of ambushers is around 100. She can only stare in shock, while Uman-hee's interest is clearly piqued. Uman-hae finds his ability to sense their exact numbers almost unbelievable. Just then, a volley of projectiles rains down from the sky, and a horde of warriors descends from the trees, their blades ready for a slaughter. Dan Hyung-woo calmly notes that this is only the first wave of about 50 men. The Tang family elder orders him to stay back and guard the cargo, dismissing the attackers as small fry. He leaps into the fray, surrounded by a swirl of his own powerful energy, and he declares that he alone is more than enough to handle them. Hyung-pyo turns to Dan Hyung-woo, asking for his assessment of the fight. But our boy calmly predicts that the old man will have no trouble winning. And just as he said, the Black Snake Hall warriors are cut down with brutal efficiency. Despite their reputation, they are no match for the Tang family's might. The younger Tang member carves a path through the enemy, a whirlwind of deadly strikes. From her perch on the wagon, Haye watches the one-sided battle unfold. She begins to wonder if she's underestimated the true power of the Tang family. Her subordinate confirms that their 50 men were dealt with far too easily. He warns that even with their own reinforcements, victory is impossible. Haye's eyes narrow, realizing that for now, a strategic retreat is their only option. She wonders how she can possibly signal a retreat without anyone noticing, but a quiet voice cuts through her thoughts, telling her he won't stop them. Her subordinate is stunned, wondering what he just heard. A chilling realization dawns on him. The porter was listening to their sound transmission. Dan Hyung-woo calmly repeats that if they want to leave, he won't get in their way. The subordinate can only stare, his mind reeling from the impossible feat. Haye is equally stunned, realizing he's been listening to their private conversation all along. But Dan Hyung-woo's expression remains completely unfazed by their shock, a feat that should be utterly impossible for any martial artist. He then offers a simple, chilling warning: retreat now or he will kill them all. She realizes with a cold sweat that his threat is absolutely real, and so she quietly gives the order for her subordinate to signal a full retreat. The man acknowledges her command and quickly vanishes into the trees. Hye turns back with a wry smile, thanking him for sparing her men's lives. But Dan Hyung-woo had his own reasons for letting them go. It wasn't the presence of her hidden warriors that had concerned him, but rather the overwhelming power he sensed from the other side. The Tang family had dispatched the Black Snake Hall with almost no effort. But from the shadows, a new observer notes that the vanguard has been eliminated. He reveals that the first attack was merely bait, and the real ambush will begin when their guard is down. The true ambush force, the Red Moon Corps, lies in wait. Their eyes gleam from the shadows, ready to strike. Everything is going exactly according to their plan. With Dan Hyung-woo's attention elsewhere, He's warriors make their escape. But even with them gone, Dan Hyung-woo senses the killing intent in the air is only growing stronger, a palpable, unpleasant feeling that hangs over the forest. With the immediate threat gone, the Tang family elder decides they'll make camp for the night. Hyung-pyo suggests that Jo Seol-yeon stay with Haye for her comfort and safety, but she refuses, unwilling to accept special treatment while the others rough it. She then admits that there's another reason for her decision. She admits she never paid much attention to the agency, assuming it was just a peaceful place for simple jobs. But this journey has opened her eyes to the truth. The agency's peace was earned by the sacrifices of every member, a realization that makes another porter ask Dan Hyung-woo about his hidden strength. Seol-yeon's gaze hardens with a newfound resolve. She declares she will no longer be the young lady of a fallen family, but will instead become the new head of the Hanam Escort Agency. She turns to Dan Hyung-woo, a question in her eyes. She asks if he has something to say about her decision. He calmly explains that to lead the agency, she must first start at the bottom, as a porter. His blunt, logical answer leaves both her and Hyung-pyo completely flustered. But she takes his words to heart, eagerly asking Hyung-pyo to teach her how to be the best porter she can be. Hyung-pyo can't help but smile, seeing how much she's already grown. But as the night deepens, the true danger still lurks in the shadows. The Red Moon Corps, an elite assassination unit raised by the Black Snake Hall. They are masters of assassination and the art of stealth. But their true strength isn't just hiding in the shadows. They move as a single unified entity, a perfectly coordinated killing machine. And in a flash of fire, their silent ambush begins. The camp is thrown into chaos, with guards falling before they can even react. Even the powerful Tang family elder is taken down, silenced and subdued. And Seol-yeon is captured, her newfound resolve shattered in an instant. But amidst the chaos, Dan Hyung-woo remains standing, his back to the fallen. He turns his attention to the forest where the true threat still lurks. A single red eye gleams from the shadows, its focus now on him. The leader of the Red Moon Corps rallies his remaining men for the final assault. A wave of red energy signals their readiness to strike. But Dan Hyung-woo's gaze is fixed, knowing exactly where they're hiding. He watches them gather, their stealth completely useless against his senses. The leader gives the command to attack on his signal. But before he can even finish his count, a hand clamps down on his face. Dan Hyung-woo has already closed the distance, a silent predator in the night. And with a single lightning-fast kick, He sends the leader crashing to the ground. The man's eyes widen in disbelief, his plan shattered in an instant. He can only lie there, completely paralyzed by the unexpected assault. But even from the ground, he gives the final signal for his men to attack. They're ordered to leave no survivors, starting with their most dangerous target. And their first target is the fallen Tang family elder, Tang Hoguan. The assassin mocks him, declaring the thunder grenades now belong to the Black Snake Hall. But just as his blade is about to fall, it's met by another. As Dan Hyung-woo stands over the elder, effortlessly blocking the fatal blow, the leader roars in fury, wondering why the lookout he thought was subdued is still standing. The younger Tang member is stunned, unable to comprehend how he failed to sense the newcomer's presence. But Dan Hyung-woo's gaze is cold and unwavering. He calmly identifies the assassins, his body crackling with a familiar blue energy. The leader realizes with a jolt that the porter somehow overheard their private sound transmission. Hyung-woo informs him that the Red Moon Corps is no more, and he is the only one left. The man can only stare in fury, demanding to know what kind of monster he's facing. But Dan Hyung-woo simply tells him it's time to rejoin his fallen comrades. And with a single fluid motion, he unleashes his power. The leader's form dissolves in the blinding light, his grand plan turning to dust. And just like that, the last of the assassins is completely erased from existence. The Tang family elder and his nephew are stunned, realizing the forest is now littered with the bodies of their attackers. Jo Seol-yeon asks what happened, and Young-pyo explains it was a final, desperate ambush. She immediately panics, asking if the other porters are safe. But Young-pyo reassures her that only the enemy forces were taken down. He explains that Dan Hyung-woo was the one who stepped in to handle the threat. Our boy's gaze remains as calm and steady as ever. Seol-yeon looks on with admiration, realizing he's protected her once again. The younger Tang member reconsiders his assessment, realizing Young-woo isn't as merciful as he thought. And from her wagon, Uman-hae smirks, finding him to be an unsolvable puzzle. With the last of the threats eliminated, the escort team continues its journey. The escort team makes its final push, their long and bloody journey almost at an end. They've finally reached their destination, the city of Chengdu in Sichuan. The surviving porters can barely contain their relief, already dreaming of a well-earned drink. But Uman-hee's gaze is fixed on Jo Seol-yeon, a quiet question in her eyes. She asks what Seol-yeon is thinking about. Seol-yeon seems concerned, reminding the woman that she was supposed to part ways with them before they arrived. But Uman-hee simply smiles, telling her not to worry about it. Her casual dismissal does little to ease Seol-yeon's unease. Hyung-pyo teases Dan Hyung-woo, warning him that he's about to be very busy once they arrive. But he quickly remembers that his new friend doesn't quite understand the concept of a joke. He explains there's an Ak family manor nearby, connecting it to the friend Dan Hyung-woo mentioned. The suggestion catches our boy's attention, a chance to finally fulfill his promise. His mind flashes back to his friend's final, desperate request. With a newfound purpose, he declares they will go to the manor immediately. And with that, the Hanam escort agency finally arrives at the grand estate of the Sichuan Tang family. The elder is greeted by his men, quickly ordering them to secure the precious cargo. The survivors of the escort team can only look on, stunned by the sheer scale of the place. The elder then presents them with their payment, acknowledging their hard work. He formally addresses Jo Seol-yeon as the new agency head, a title she quietly accepts. She holds the payment in her hands, the first step in her new life as a leader. Her eyes well up with tears, reflecting the immense weight of her recent loss, a painful memory of her home and agency consumed by flames. The faces of her fallen brother and captain haunt her every thought. But Young-pyo offers a word of encouragement, telling her things will work out. She wipes away a tear, finding a sliver of strength in his words. She knows she must be strong for the people she has left to protect. And with a tearful smile, she thanks him for his unwavering support. Elsewhere, Uman-hee's subordinate laments their failure to seize the thunder grenades. But she tells him to forget it for now, knowing their clan will learn of the weapons soon enough. Because the Uman clan never fails to obtain what it sets its sights on, she declares that right now the one thing she wants most is the mysterious porter, Dan Hyung-woo. As the Tang family elder watches them prepare to leave, Hyung-pyo gathers the men, ready for their next move. And Dan Hyung-woo's gaze is fixed, his own mission now clear. Hyung-pyo reminds him of the nearby Ak family manor, the home of his fallen friend. He politely declines the elder's offer to stay, explaining he has business with our boy. But Dan Hyung-woo is already gone, leaping into the sky without a word. He lands gracefully on a nearby rooftop, his eyes scanning the city for the home of his friend's family. He focuses his senses, his gaze sweeping over the city below. He tries to recall the unique energy signature of his fallen friend, Ak Segi, and across the sprawling city he feels it, a faint but familiar flow of chi. Meanwhile, Hyung-pyo leads the rest of the weary team to a local inn for the night. But as the others dream of a hot bath, Seo-yeon notices Hyung-woo and his mentor preparing to leave. Hyung-pyo simply tells her they'll explain everything when they return. Dan Hyung-woo's gaze remains fixed, his mind already on the mission ahead. He gives Seo-yeon a simple, reassuring gesture. Placing a gentle hand on her head, she's taken aback by the unexpected sign of affection, wondering what it could possibly mean. A comforting warmth spreads through her, a feeling she hasn't known in a long time. He offers a simple promise that he will return, and with that, he and Hyung-pyo set off into the city streets. Jo Seo-yeon can only watch as they disappear into the crowd, but Hyung-pyo suddenly realizes they're not alone. Umun-hae follows close behind, her intentions still a mystery. Hyung-pyo panics, realizing she has no intention of going back. She's blindly following them, without even knowing their destination. But Dan Hyung-woo simply tells his mentor that his pace is too slow, and with a gentle touch, he lends his power to the struggling escort warrior. As Hyung-pyo slows to keep an eye on their follower, he's suddenly filled with a surge of unfamiliar energy. And with a word from Dan Hyung-woo, he's launched forward at an impossible speed. Umun-hae can only watch in shock, wondering if the escort warrior was hiding his true power all along. The two men become blurs of motion, racing across the city rooftops. Hyung-pyo pushes himself to keep up, while Dan Hyung-woo remains effortlessly calm. Their destination is a grand estate under the quiet moonlight. They land silently on a nearby roof, their journey at an end. And together, they look down upon the Ak family manor. Hyung-pyo gives a quiet nod, ready to help his friend fulfill his promise. But Umun-hae and her subordinate struggle to keep pace, left far behind in the dust. They finally arrive, her subordinate admitting he could barely keep up with their impossible speed. Hyung-pyo approaches the gate, finding the lack of guards deeply unsettling. The heavy doors creak open just enough to reveal a sliver of darkness. A stern-faced man appears in the opening, his gaze cold and unwelcoming. His expression is one of deep suspicion, a silent warning to the visitors. But Dan Hyung-woo sees an uncanny resemblance to his fallen friend, Ak Se-gi. The man dismisses them, but Hyung-pyo presses on, asking if he knows that very name. The simple question causes the man's face to twist with shock and rage, and he explodes with fury, demanding to know